Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the MCF Pre-Retiring Academy. I'm Hunter Nybert. I hope everyone is doing well so far this week and has gotten their week off to a really great start. The weather's warmed up here in Kentucky, and it's an exciting week. Before I get going, I just wanted to say that there were a lot of really good questions that came in from our last module on Social Security. I was really pleased with the response and questions about that. And if you're just now getting to it, feel free to ask questions, even if we move on to a different module and stuff like that. Feel free to come back and ask questions, if you will. I know I mentioned that in the first, but the Social Security in particular, and then I would also say Medicare, there's a lot of information in those slide decks. And so, sometimes it takes a while to absorb that. And I would expect that you might have more questions in specific scenarios. And if you reach out with those, I'll do my best to answer them. And if I don't know that, I've got two CPAs here in the office that can help me with that Social Security. And we have a couple of really great reference books that I often have to go to for very specific information, because there's a lot out there and it's a lot to absorb and remember. So today I'm going to get sharing my screen real quick. So in today's webinar, though, we are going to be covering withdrawal strategies. And first, I'd like to say, how you plan to withdraw your money out of your retirement accounts is just as important as how you saved it. And hopefully by now you've figured out a reasonable amount that you plan on taking out in retirement. Obviously, we worked on some of that in the earlier modules. But having a sound strategy for withdrawing your money for your income needs, it really does three main things. It can extend the life of your savings. It can also, between a plan with all of your accounts, separate accounts, taxable, tax deferred, and maybe tax free, you can really create a good plan to be the most tax efficient in and throughout retirement. And then, really the most important piece of having any plan, but really setting that withdrawal strategy up front, is really just to help bring further peace of mind as you move forward. So we're going to talk about lots of different strategies and techniques that you can do, 4 or 5 in particular. And we'll get to those in just a second. But first, I would like to, basically stop and talk about something even more basic. And it's a question that I really get often. And that is, once I retire, how do I access my money? Like, what's the process? Like, how do I, do I take it all at once? Do they drip it out monthly? So let's kind of take that question first and go with that. So first of all, if you plan for your savings, if your plan for your savings, I should say, is to keep your money in your employer-sponsored qualified plan, then really all these plans are very specific and have different rules than one another. So it's going to be important that you contact your custodian and record keeper for specific distribution options available to you within the plan, as well as to learn what fees could be incurred as a result of that. The options amongst distributions are different amongst each custodian and record keeper that we work with. But in my experience, most custodians and record keepers of the 401ks and 403bs typically charge withdrawal fees for distributions. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you were to take money out, then they will charge you a fee in order to access that money. Dave, our boss, likes to say that 401ks and 403bs are really good vehicles for the accumulation stage of life, but they're not always the best for the distribution phase. And some of that has to do with some of those vehicles charging more fees. Some custodians will limit the amount of distributions that you could take per year, particularly when you're older. So if you leave money in and are blessed not to have to take any out before 72 and a half, some of those might just make you take all of your required minimum distribution at once. But some limit the amount of distributions per year, and most of them all that we deal with and that I see do have a fee for distribution. So why is that important? Well, if you plan on taking a distribution in a monthly manner, well, then that's something to consider. If you're going to get charged, if they allow that and you're going to get charged a fee for each time you do, you might want to think about quarterly or maybe even lump sum in terms of for the year. That's not my favorite plan in terms of taking lump sum because you miss out a little bit on the market fluctuations, and I would rather take it out a little bit of aside personally, but everybody's needs and wants are different. Typically, the other option that you have, there's a bit more flexibility when taking withdrawals from IRAs, which are individual retirement accounts. So IRAs, no matter what type, traditional, Roth, rollover IRAs, and there's even more that won't necessarily be related to you guys, but you might, maybe you're self-employed and you have a SEP or something like that. But often there are no fees associated with taking distributions out, and those can be set up on a monthly basis directly to your bank account. So that is that's a pro in my mind. You're not locked into any amount, and you could just call and get it as needed as well to the custodian. However, if the IRA is managed by you, one of the cons would be is that when you do have to start taking required minimum distributions, you would be responsible for figuring that out. But you can, most of the custodians and record keepers do have tools for that. And even in IRAs, they can, if you're dealing directly with the custodian of the IRA, they can help you do it. And then, of course, if you work with an advisor, you're paying them obviously to kind of help you with those type things if you do have a managed IRA, and that they would be able to help you assist with that. So, there are many, there are always three questions that we kind of have to ask when retiring and determining the withdrawal strategy. And a lot of you probably heard me say this, but I'll say it again. Number one is, when do you need the money? Number two is, how much will you need to withdraw from your account? And number three, from how long? And we always, reply to the third one. If we knew how long we were going to live, a lot of this would be easy. All of these factors are strong considerations that need to be looked at when choosing a withdrawal strategy. So keep in mind that all of your savings accounts, not just your 401k, need to be considered when putting together a plan. You might have a taxable account. Maybe it's just a taxable investment account. You'll have, obviously cash, which you've already paid tax on. You might have retirement accounts, which could be tax deferred or tax free if they are Roth when they come out. So it's important to incorporate all of these to kind of find that tax efficiency. Having a tax efficient withdrawal plan, as I mentioned earlier, can extend the life of your savings. But if you follow a basic withdrawal sequence and pull assets from your accounts, really in an order that I'll get to, you can help minimize your tax as a result of your withdrawals. So, a typical sequence, and again, everybody's different, so this might not be for every single person. There are some ways you can look at this differently. But in general, an easy rule of thumb would be that if you're 72 and above, obviously you take your income from those required minimum distributions because you have to anyways, right? And then, if you don't, then the order would be you're going to take your taxable accounts first. Well, why? Well, because you've already paid tax on those accounts, and you might have to pay a capital gain on that investment when you sell it. But capital gains are taxed less than income, at least how the law is right now. So most people would pay between 15 and 20% on a capital gain, and then you could use that money as part of your income. Then, the next suggestion would be your tax deferred accounts, your 401ks, your traditional IRAs, your 403bs, 457s, those kind of things. And then lastly, would be your tax-free buckets or your tax-free accounts, whether those be Roth, Roth 401k, Roth IRA. Maybe you invested into some tax-free municipal securities, those kind of things. So in terms of order, that is a nice, easy way for you to be able to do that. So now we're going to dig into some different strategies from withdrawing funds from your accounts. And some of you have heard of this one. So this would be the 4% rule. The 4% rule is when you withdraw 4% of your retirement savings in the first year of retirement. And in subsequent years, you may be able to pull an additional 1 to 2% of that 4%, not of the overall account, of whatever you took out to help adjust for inflation. So for example, if you had $1 million saved under this strategy, you would withdraw $40,000 during the first year of your retirement. And the second year, with that account and adjustment for inflation, perhaps you might take out $40,800. That would be the original amount plus 2%. And the third year, you would withdraw $41,616, which is basically the previous year plus 2% and so on. So potential advantages from this, it's a really simple and easy rule to follow. Generally, people that do this and stick to this type of plan won't have a huge problem of running out of money, but it all also depends on what your need is and how much you have to take out. Potential disadvantages of it, the 4%, you decide the withdrawal is unlikely to equal the same amount each year. So the pool of money you're drawing from may grow or shrink a little bit. So it may not be consistent in terms of what your income needs would be. So other retirees take out what's called a fixed dollar amount over a specific time. And so, and as an example, you might decide to withdraw $40,000 annually and then reassess the dollar amount at the end of a 5-year period. While this provides nice and predictable annual income, which obviously a budget will help you plan accordingly, it doesn't do much to protect against things like inflation, depending on the dollar amount you choose. If it's too much, you could erode your principal too fast. But moreover, if your investments are in a down or down in value with market volatility, you may need to sell off more of those assets in order to meet those withdrawal needs. So that is a potential pitfall of that. Advantages: this approach simplifies your money management, and you can kind of automate everything for a period of time. Disadvantages: this approach doesn't protect you against inflation any more than the first one did. And in fact, your $40,000 in 5 years probably won't have the same purchasing power in 5 years, let alone 1 year to the next. So, that's the fixed dollar approach. Also is a fixed percentage withdrawal. So another approach is to withdraw a set percentage of your portfolio annually. And it differs a little bit from a fixed percentage, or a fixed dollar amount, I should say. A fixed percentage, the dollar amount of the distribution will vary based on the underlying value of your portfolio. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, that could change the amount that you take. But while this method creates a certain amount of uncertainty because of what I just said, if you choose a percentage below an anticipated rate of return, you could grow your income and account value over time. On the other hand, if the percentage is too high, you kind of risk depleting your account and your assets prematurely. So as an example, let's say you have $1 million and decide to take out 4% every year. This gives you $40,000. Obviously, we've covered that. That's the fixed percentage. It's, again, very simple approach to follow, but it also depends on how much that 4% is relative to what your need is. We also have a systematic withdrawal plan. This is where you only withdraw income such as dividends or interest created by the underlying investments in your portfolio. To do this one, you know, you're probably going to need to have saved a little bit more, but you know, it also depends on what your income need is. But because your principal remains intact, this is designed to prevent you from ever running out of money. And it may afford you the potential to grow your investments even bigger or more over time while providing retirement income. However, if the amount of income you receive in any given year will vary, because it's based on performance. So if performance is down, you're, you know, more than likely your dividends and interest could be as well. So there's also that risk in terms of the amount that you're able to withdraw won't be able to keep up with inflation. But, you know, advantages, you're only touching the income of your investments, not the principal. So your portfolio maintains the ability to grow and to last. Disadvantages, you won't draw the same amount of money every year. Some people like to know what that number is, and you might get outpaced by inflation. So the next is what we call the bucket strategy. So this is where you set aside several years of worth of living expenses in your investments, and then your investments would ideally grow, sustaining much more of your savings as long as possible. So an example of this is, let's say your income need, is $50,000. You know, an example of this is you might take 7 to 10 years of income of that and put it in fixed income and cash. So, you know, very conservative investments that grow a little bit slower, but the principal is more protected. So let's say, you know, it was 50,000 is what your income need was. Let's use a 10-year runway for that, because the market level is a little high. That's probably what we would look at in today's environment. So that would mean out of your portfolio, you would take $500,000 and put in the fixed income, and whatever remaining you would have, you would distribute amongst equities. So that is kind of how the bucket strategy works. And then you can, you know, there's a lot of peace of mind in that one. Personally, I like looking at the bucket strategy often as another option to compare to one of those, and usually compare it to one of the other ones we talked about. But the you know, markets tend to run in cycles. And this withdrawal strategy helps extinguish what's called sequence of returns risk. It limits that as much as possible, and it allows you to have 10 years worth of your income needs met. It allows the rest of your investments to grow as you spend down your fixed income bucket of those 10 years. Then when your equities on the other portion are up, you can refill that bucket over time. If your equities are down, you might wait a little bit longer and spend those down longer and give your equities a chance to go to continue to rise and gain a little bit in value. So you get to choose in terms of more of a potential based on where your levels of those are, which allows your savings to grow over time. There's a constant review of whatever your funding level is. So in terms of, as you get closer to spending that 10 years of income, let's say you're living that long, then, you know, there's a constant review of having to refill that. So making sure your funding needs are always there. And it gives you kind of a self-control, a sense of control, I should say, over your assets. The potential disadvantage of this approach is really it takes much more engagement and much more time, but there's quite a bit of pros to that one as well. So, and then of course, there is no one that you all have to look at and do. So we can also mix and match these approaches. You could go fixed dollar and then switch to fixed percentage or systematic. There's no right or wrong way to do this, and it really depends on what your overall income situation in retirement is going to be, coming from all of your sources like Social Security, your retirement savings assets, and your taxable assets alike. So really, in conclusion, this is a lot in a short time, but this webinar is meant to be kind of a quick hitter. As far as what's the best for you, that's a personal decision of how complicated you want things to be. I am, for my personal family situation, I'm preparing myself. I'm 45. I'm not close to retirement, but I'm preparing myself at some point in time to probably do the bucket strategy. I might also possibly be able to do a bucket strategy or the combination of a 4%, say a 4% withdrawal and a systematic withdrawal. Those are the two that are two to kind of hybrid or mix and match, if you will, of what works best for me. If you're going to do it on your own, then read into each one of these and see what works and what's easiest for you guys as well. And as always, I'm here to have these conversations. If there's something you don't understand about any one of these withdrawal strategies, then reach out to me. Obviously planning, this is going to be a central thing. We have to continue to plan in order to kind of make sure we're where we need to be and where we want to be as we really get ready to get into this retirement portion of our life. So thanks for tuning in today. Again, reach out to us if you have any questions, and keep working on keep in mind the tax efficiency. Use your various types of savings that you have to your advantage. Don't pay more than what you need to. So taxable, tax deferred, tax-free buckets. That's the simplest way that works for a large percentage of people out there. For some people, it might make more sense depending on what their estate plan and what their needs are to put even tax-free up front. But in general, most of the time, that sequence works very well. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all have a great day. We'll be in touch on on the next pieces coming up very soon. We're probably going to maybe even switch and add another live webinar to this. I'm trying to work a couple of things on that. But if you have any questions, please reach out. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys real soon. Bye.